Welcome to Nightfall Crypt, where the shadows come alive and the unknown waits in the darkness.
Who was the old man at our door? That was the question that haunted me for years. It was a quiet Sunday morning, 2 days after my grandfather passed away. The house was still heavy with grief, his empty chair at the dining table, his faded scent lingering in the hallway, his favorite radio sitting silent. We were trying to get through breakfast when a sharp knock echoed through the house. When my father opened the door, our neighborhood security guard stood outside, his expression tight, almost nervous. "I need to tell you something," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. We exchanged wary glances before my father stepped aside, letting him in. "There was an old man here earlier," the guard continued, voice hushed. "He knocked on your door for at least half an hour before giving up and leaving." I frowned. Who was he? The guard shook his head. I didn't recognize him, but when I asked what he wanted, he told me. He needed to say goodbye to someone he had never had the chance to meet. A thick silence filled the room. My mother's face paled. My father's hands tightened into fists on the table. "Who was he looking for?" my mother asked, barely above a whisper. "I don't know," the guard said. He never gave a name, just stood there staring at the house, and then walked away. The eeriness of the situation settled into my bones. My grandfather had just passed. Was this some old friend, a forgotten relative? Then the guard's eyes swept across the room. When they landed on the framed photograph on our living room shelf, his entire body went rigid. His face drained of color as he pointed a trembling finger. "That's him," he whispered. "That's the old man." Every hair on my body stood on end. We all turned to look at the picture he was pointing at. It was my grandfather. The room felt impossibly still. My mother gasped, clutching her chest, while my father just stared, mouth slightly open. My stomach twisted into knots. "That's not possible," my father finally managed to say. He passed 2 days ago." The guard looked like he was going to be sick. "I saw him, I swear I did. He stood right there knocking. He spoke to me." I could barely breathe. Had my grandfather returned? And if so, who had he come back for? Then it hit me, my newborn sister. She was just a few weeks old, far too young to ever have met him properly. My grandfather had adored the idea of her, had spoken endlessly about how he couldn't wait to hold her. But he passed away before he ever got the chance. My mother must have realized it at the same time. Tears welled in her eyes. He came back," she murmured, "just to say goodbye." We sat there in stunned silence, processing what had just been revealed. No one doubted it anymore. The guard had no reason to lie, no knowledge of what our grandfather looked like. But he had seen him, had spoken to him. My father stood up as if in a daze and walked to the front door. He stepped outside, looking down the street in both directions, as if expecting to see him still standing there. But there was nothing. Just the empty sidewalk, the quiet hum of a passing car, and the wind rustling the trees. The moment passed. The guard left, shaking his head, muttering about how he'd never seen anything like that before. We never spoke of it again. But sometimes, when I sit alone in the living room at night, I stare at that framed picture wondering, did my grandfather truly come back? Did he stand at our door, hoping for one last moment, one final goodbye? I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but I do believe in unfinished business. And I like to think, in whatever way the universe allows, that my grandfather finally got to see my sister, and that after that moment, he finally found peace.
And so, the shadows grow darker and the mystery deepens. But this is only the beginning. what lies beyond the door, who or what is behind the whispers. The answers await in the next chapter of this chilling tale. Subscribe to Nightfall Crypt and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. The crypt holds many secrets, and we've only just begun to uncover them. Until next time, stay in the light if you dare.